Her card was torn up in front of the entire bank, with no one knowing who she really was. The response she gave would have surprised even the most experienced. But let's start from the very beginning. Lena walked into the bank with a confident stride, shoulders squared. Thoughts about an upcoming project, an important meeting, and her new position swirled in her mind. She had just become the head of the department at a major company, and this moment was supposed to be one of the most important of her life. She made her way decisively toward the counter, where a young cashier stood. He looked like most young people in this part of the city, self-assured, with a slight hint of arrogance. He didn't even notice her approach, and was busy glancing at his phone, scrolling through pages on the screen. "Good afternoon," Lena said with a slight smile. "I need to activate my card." The cashier looked up, only mildly surprised that she hadn't just thrown her card on the counter. He took it without much interest, swiped it through the terminal, but nothing appeared on the screen. He sighed and repeated the process. Still nothing. His gaze grew more mocking. "Sorry, but it seems like there's an issue with your card. See, it's not going through," he said, barely holding back a smirk. Lena glanced at the screen. Strangely, her card wasn't working. She felt something vaguely unpleasant stir inside her. It should have been no big deal, but something about his tone set her on edge. "This is impossible," she said, looking him in the eye, trying to keep her irritation in check. "It's activated. I've checked." The cashier, still not looking at her, kept tapping at the keys with barely concealed disdain. "Seems like your card is a fake," he said, turning to a colleague to discuss the issue, ignoring Lena's words. Almost automatically, he pulled scissors from the drawer and, without warning, tore the card in half. Lena froze. His hands moved so effortlessly, as though tearing up some insignificant piece of paper. At first, he didn't even notice how Lena jolted, ready to confront him, but instead, she paused, taking a deep breath. "Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just that cards like these don't work," he mumbled, but his face suggested he was almost enjoying the act. Lena felt everything inside her stir. She clenched her fists, but held her ground. At that moment, something clicked in her mind. This incident wasn't random. This young man was just another product of a system that viewed black people as second class. But her pride and composure wouldn't let her break. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a lack of respect born out of his bias. She took a deep breath and looked at the cashier, her irritation no longer hidden. "I hope you know who you're talking to," she said coldly, almost whispering. However, James seemed oblivious to her warning and continued chatting with his colleagues. Lena didn't wait for any further explanations. She turned and left the bank, feeling her pride fighting not to drown in the bitterness of the moment. After Lena left the bank, her anger didn't subside. She was shocked, but she felt she couldn't just let this go unnoticed. After years of fighting for success, here she was again, confronting bias. She quickly called Rachel, her colleague and friend, and recounted the incident. Rachel immediately suggested recording a video and posting it on social media to show the world how things like this happen. "We need people to see how this cashier treats others," Rachel said. "Let them know that this is not an isolated incident." Lena thought for a moment and agreed. She knew that staying silent would only empower those who were used to treating black people as second-class citizens. That same day, they met at a cafe and then headed to the bank. Once again, the same cashier, James, was behind the counter, nonchalantly helping customers. Lena approached him, turned on her phone camera, and asked him to activate her card again. James, just like last time, looked at the card and claimed it wasn't working. But this time, noticing that Lena was filming him, he stepped back and sneered. "This is not a real card," he said, a grin on his face but with visible tension in his voice. Lena, ignoring his demeanor and not hiding her irritation, asked, "Are you really going to tear it up again? Why don't you just do it in front of everyone?" The cashier, not understanding what was happening, grabbed the scissors and attempted to tear the card once more. That's when Lena finally pressed record. James's words became even less convincing as another bank employee, noticing the filming, approached and asked what was going on. Lena quickly finished recording and uploaded the video to social media. Within minutes, it went viral. Hundreds of comments flooded in, and users began to passionately discuss the incident. Lena could feel the growing pressure, pushing her to take further action. Soon, as she was leaving the bank, her phone exploded with notifications. One of them caught her eye. Her new boss, who had just arrived in town, had seen the video. He was well acquainted with the bank's leadership, and after seeing what had happened, he immediately decided to intervene. "My God, what is this mess?" he said, once he fully understood what had taken place. A couple of hours later, an internal investigation began within the bank. James, realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control, tried to justify himself, but his attempts were unconvincing. His behavior was now under close scrutiny, and before long he was told that his duties were temporarily suspended. Lena didn't immediately realize how quickly everything began to change. Thoughts were swirling in her head, but with each passing day, as more people discussed the incident, she felt her internal conflict intensify. This moment felt pivotal, but what came next? She wasn't seeking revenge, yet the desire for justice remained unwavering. Lena knew she had to make a decision, not just about James, but about herself as well. The day after James had been suspended, Lena met with the bank's director. The man was her colleague, and despite his initial support, his gaze was cautious. He was clearly concerned about the bank's reputation and didn't want the situation to escalate into a scandal. "Lena, I understand your frustration, but you must realize the impact this will have on all of us," he said. "Can't you just let this go and move on?" But Lena felt her silence suffocating her. Letting it go wasn't an option for her. This wasn't just about James. This was a systemic issue that demanded attention. At home, she tried to calm herself. She reflected on her journey. How many times she had faced similar treatment, trying to prove her worth. Her family had always taught her that justice was the most important thing, but that forgiveness also had its power. A simple act of letting go could fix everything, but that would be wrong. Things would stay as they were. The injustice would go unpunished. Rachel called her constantly, offering various ways to end this. However, Lena felt that the solution needed to be something more significant and reasoned. One evening, as she sat in her office scrolling through the news feeds, Lena saw comments coming from all directions. Some supported her, others said she had overreacted. Her mind was in turmoil, and suddenly, she felt her actions raising questions about what truly mattered to her. What was the right way to handle this sense of justice? And how should she act if, beneath the layer of anger, there were hidden fears and doubts? At that moment, her new boss called. He proposed an open meeting with the bank's employees, where she could address the issue of racial inequality and bias. It was unexpected, but to Lena, it felt like an opportunity. She realized this might be her chance, not only to express her views, but also to give others a chance. Reconciliation or confrontation, she needed to choose. The next day, she would have to decide what to do about James. The next day, Lena arrived at the bank with determination. She had decided to hold a meeting with the staff to address the issue of racial inequality and bias. This was her chance not only to voice her position, but also to influence the atmosphere within the bank. During the meeting, Lena spoke calmly but resolutely. She shared her personal experiences with racism and explained that actions like those of James were unacceptable. Her voice was not filled with rage, only confidence. "I'm not apologizing for what I'm doing," she said, surveying the room. "I'm here to change this bank, to make sure there is no room for prejudice." After the meeting, Lena met with James. He approached her with sincere apologies, acknowledging his wrongdoing. "I was wrong," he said, looking down. Lena didn't seek revenge, but gave him a chance to make amends. She told him, "You'll get a chance, but that depends on you." A few days later, Lena felt that her decision had changed the atmosphere in the bank. Not only had she exposed James's biased behavior, but she had also taken a step toward challenging the system. This victory wasn't about revenge, it was about the changes she was beginning to create.